All right. What's up, guys, in the TRE community, weekly running tune-up and breakfast club challenge? We got a coaching call today. Lots of great questions, and of course, we have our ever intrepid head nutrition coach, Elizabeth Inpyn. Elizabeth, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Nate. How are you doing?
Doing all right as well. Excited to dig in to some of these things. You know, I think I'm so energized in the afternoon because I've been hitting those smoothies.
That a boy. I'm telling you, the daily smoothie, it changes your life.
And change some things. So, you know, what we have going on for today, guys, just so y'all know, a bunch of you submitted questions in ahead of time, which is fantastic. We wanted to give you kind of like the broader picture view, some of the themes that we're going to talk about today before we dive in. And then I think we're just going to be packing the whole hour with questions all the way through. So Elizabeth, what do you got for us in terms of like our broad picture view of what's going on?
All right, so questions and topics we're going to cover today. We have recovery fueling between races. So if you have two races closer together, we're going to look at how to help recover between those. We're going to talk about nighttime snacking. What are some of the best options to have before bed? We're going to look at sweeteners. So in the Breakfast Club Challenge, we're avoiding all added sugars. So I'm going to give a little rundown of what I like to sweeten my food with and what I recommend. And then we're going to do a little nut analysis. So peanuts versus walnuts versus almonds, cashews, what to do, what to consume, and how much. So there you go. Those are, and then hopefully some awesome write-in questions from people that are live.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, let's just get fired. We'll start firing away with some of those things. And I also know that we had some different questions on, you know, injury prevention, on foam rolling. I'm pulling up my inbox of all the questions that I got from you guys, which is fantastic. And we'll dig into some of those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So first up, we have a question from Christy. She asked, I'm running a marathon at the end of February and a half marathon mid-March. How do I recover properly and bridge the gap between the two races? So I feel like you will have something to chime in on this in terms of running.
Right.
So you can be thinking about that. But from a nutritional standpoint, how do I recover? The big idea is to replenish muscle glycogen stores, to consume adequate protein for muscle repair, and get enough fat, healthy fat in the diet to start aiding in nutrient absorption and to boost immunity. The big idea is to replenish muscle glycogen stores.
Hey, Elizabeth, is that you?
Going on. I don't think so. And get enough fat, healthy fat in the diet to I don't know why start.
Oh, here, hold on. We got there we go. Thanks, Hank, for muting yourself. We get a little echo sometimes.
There we go.
The YouTube link is going so far for you guys going in. If we got that little echo, I'm going to shut you right up. So no worries there.
All right. So breaking that down specifically, what Christy and other athletes that, you know, have races closer together, and this is, you know, practical advice that everyone can have in terms of, you know, how to take care of yourself after any kind of a longer endurance race. So high glycemic index, kind of complex carbohydrates. Avoid and skip those simple sugars. I know, you know, we all want to treat ourselves after the race with, you know, some like ice cream or cookies or donuts or whatever. Better to lay off those for a few days, and especially, you know, right after, really look at getting in the, you know, the sweet potatoes and you know, corns and grains like the quinoa and amaranth and barley. So really those higher glycemic index foods, fruits, obviously, it's a great time to, you know, load up on the bananas and berries and things like that. that helps with glycogen stores. Then you want to really nail protein. So 100 grams or more a day at least. That helps, you know, the muscles break down and the protein helps to repair them.
What, can I interject real quick, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
You know, I know for me, I still struggle with thinking about, you know, food portions in terms of grams. And you've done such a great job in our emails of equating grams of sugar to like actual products. So what would 100 grams of protein like potentially look like spread out over a few meals?
Oh, excellent question. So that would look like, let's see, breakfast wise, if you're doing the smoothie challenge, all of those recipes have between 20 and 30 grams of protein in there, most of them on the higher side. So that's a great way to start the day. You can also do some scrambled eggs. So maybe 2 eggs and an additional third egg white scrambled together to get, you know, around 30 grams of protein there. And then if you combine that with maybe a slice of toast with nut butter or avocado or hemp seeds, you can get an extra 10 or so grams in there. A glass of milk or almond milk, you can get 7 to 8 grams there. A can of tuna at lunch is a, you know, you're getting a 25 to 30-ish grams there. For dinner, you can look at, you know, a good sized chicken breast. You can do your portion size is 6 to 8 ounces, whether that's a fish or a meat source. Those are all going to give you about 25 to 30 grams. If you buy those Costco chicken breasts, those things are huge. So you're looking at like 40 plus grams, I think, on some of those. So yeah, I would say that's looking at across the way, that's probably a good way to do it. And then if you want to, you know, if you have a snack bar, like a Mighty Organic jerky bar, I think that has about 10 grams in it. A Kind protein bar has about 10. So those are little tricks to kind of add in some additional protein that you might need.
Cool, I like that, that's cool.
It's a good question. It's nice to break it down. I think that's helpful for people.
You got to do it. You got to jump in every once in a while. We're not all.
So then after that, you really want fat. I think a lot of runners are still, no matter how fat obsessed we become, I think some runners are still scared of consuming fat. But prolonged exercise, that really takes a tax on your nervous system. And when you know, your organs depend on your nervous system for function. They depend on fat to function. So it's tough on your kidneys, your liver. It's tough on your heart. You want to make sure that you're getting fats back into your diet to help, you know, take care of your vital organs. So you want to make sure you're getting that in. Fats also help with nutrient absorption. Fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin E, all of those need fat to be absorbed. So you want to make sure that you're, you know, getting in the avocados and the cold-pressed oils and nuts and seeds.
Totally.
That I talk about a lot.
If I can jump in again real quick, you know, one of the things that was interesting to me about some of our little kind of the more you know emails that we've been getting from you through nutrition for the Breakfast Club Challenge. And guys, for those of you who don't know what the Breakfast Club Challenge is, some of you guys are coming in from, you know, our weekly running tune-up, the group that Kirk has been dropping workouts in all the time. We did our first live nutrition challenge. We're in our 2nd week, and you know, the idea is a little bit of a sugar detox. And Elizabeth has been driving this ship, and she's been helping us also like think about behavior change and specifically looking at how sugar plays a role in our life. And we've kind of looked at it in the whole context, which has been so cool. Everything from the scientific, physiological standpoint to a behavioral standpoint to how we use it in training throughout the day, and even to a degree, a historical, almost economical standpoint to see how sugar has sort of made its way into so many products. You know, one of the things that I learned, especially as a family, you know, my mom was a doctor, and she definitely jumped on wholeheartedly into the low fat movement. You know, early on, she would give us, you know, skim milk or 1%, you know, as younger. But one of the things I learned from you is that when we're drinking skim milk, it has so little fat that you actually can't absorb the vitamins that are in milk. So it almost like defeats the purpose.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks for paying such great attention to those emails. So yeah, when we don't have that fat in there, we're not benefiting. We're not getting that calcium, that vitamin D, and the vitamin K, and we're missing out on the, you know, the actual fat that our bodies need to, you know, to function. And we need to be nice to your mother. We didn't know better back then. So they were teaching it in medical school. They were teaching it, you know, the food pyramid, fat was a bad thing. And we, you know, they were kind of misinforming everybody.
You know, so. Cameron just chimed in on the group chat, and I just wanted to give this a little shout out. He said he eliminated sugar and white flour about 3 years ago. He said he was 193 pounds when he started, and he lost 20 pounds over 6 months on those reductions alone.
Cameron, that's incredible. And it goes to show what a huge difference it makes. I'm curious, I wonder if Cameron, like what he missed the most or what he was maybe surprised had sugar in it. Cause it's difficult when you go, yeah, when you eliminate the white flour too, white flour and sugar. We'll have to have Cameron follow up. I'm curious.
Do you want to sugar is definitely an addiction. I can tell you that.
There we go.
It's hard to beat the addiction, especially the first month or so. But the benefits, like especially dropping white flour and sugar at the same time, was incredible. I lost like having the late afternoon cravings. That went away. I stopped having to snack right before a run or right after a run. I was able to maintain my weight like within 5 pounds or so pretty easily, being off sugar. So yeah, lots and lots of benefits.
Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's so helpful to a lot of people that, you know, really are addicted to sugar, and to see that it was so powerful.
Yeah.
And beneficial.
Cameron, I did want to ask too, like what prompted the change for you? Like what, because obviously that's a big change for a lot of people, and it requires a lot of work. This is one of those things I feel like a lot of us have kind of collectively heard or seen in the background, but there's always a difference between, you know, what we know and what we decide to do and act with on what we know. Like, so what was that for you? Like, what did that look like?
Well, there was a number of things that was happening in my life. I've never really done specific diets, but I did read a Matt Fitzgerald book, and it had a lot of advice in it. But one of the things I took out of the book was that if you just look at your diet as far as its quality, and you take 2 things out of your diet that you know you're doing wrong, and add in 2 things you know are better, and just see how that works. My 2 things I dropped were the white flour and sugar.
Yeah.
And I added in greater helpings of veggies and fats. And that alone is what, you know, got my weight down. I wanted my weight to get down just for the pure comfort of being able to run longer without so much impact on my joints, and you know, coupling that with lots of other things. But since that time, I've changed over to a higher fat diet and done more of that optimized fat metabolism. So I learned a lot more about fats since then. So that's been kind of the second tier for me.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. And what are you doing now? What are you working on? What are you training for? What are you doing with us?
I'm mostly doing for you guys. I'm just trying to get new ideas for strength workouts. I'm 47, and you know, I did some of your tests originally and just found I had really inflexible ankles, and that some of the hip sort of stretches and exercises that I was doing, I wasn't doing very well, and I found some of your videos, and so that's really helped me as far as just being healthy. I do ultra marathons, and they're all solely on trails, and so it's a very core intensive exercise, and so I'm just working on that and trying to stay healthy, trying to be a lifelong runner still. And you know, people talk about that like it's a great ideal, but you really have to do all the little things to be able to do that.
That's cool. You know, not to salt the jar too much, but are there any like strength or mobility exercises specifically that you did with us that was particularly surprising? And I always like to ask this question and give you a moment to think about it, you know, just because, you know, some of the things that we're sometimes presenting, it doesn't look necessarily that special, like they're pretty simple things. But I do know that on the right combination, they can have an effect, a powerful effect. So I just wanted to see if there was any moments you had with any one or two exercises, or if it was just more of a collective thing.
Well, I can tell you I thought I'd be able to do single leg squats within like 6 months.
Yeah.
I think it's been 2 years and I still haven't done a single one, but I'm a heck of a lot closer. I just, you know, working on ankle flexibility is, they're just not easy things. It just takes a lot of consistent, you know, work on all of these little hitches that you develop over the years. And, you know, so I just keep trying to stay at it. But yeah, some of them are just eye-opening just as far as technique, you know, just, you know, push-up technique and squat technique. And so it's been fun to make it challenging and to, you know, copy some of the techniques that you have in the videos.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, Cameron. That is super helpful. So Elizabeth, did you have any more to add in terms of, I know we got on a little tangent, a really productive, fantastic.
Yes, it was really productive. So just a couple kind of supplement type things that I think Christy could add on top and other runners. A probiotic is essential. So after, which I hope everyone's taking one all the time, but especially after a race when your immune system is low and your GI tract is aggravated and inflamed, you really want to get back in there and take care of that. So a probiotic, if I know my athletes have back-to-back races, I will double their dosage for the first 7 days to help get everything back in line. So probiotic is helpful, and obviously fermented foods, kimchi, kombucha, those kinds of things, sauerkraut will help. And then collagen, you guys know I love my collagen powder. I have it every day, but if you're not taking it, that can help kind of start rebuilding the joints and tendons. Cordyceps, that it's a mushroom that helps with inflammation and helps boost recovery. And then tart cherry juice and beetroot juice. I like both of those powders as well. So that would be my recommendations for Christy in terms of, you know, how to eat, but then also some supplements to maybe add back in.
Yeah. Elizabeth, you know what you haven't mentioned yet, and I'm kind of disappointed about it, is goat milk.
I'm saving it. That comes up in a later discussion.
You haven't somehow figured out how to. So you guys don't know this, but Elizabeth and I secretly work for the goat milk lobby of the United States. We're trying to get a real big push there.
Yeah, the cow milk industry is probably going to sue us. That's my goal, is to be more like Oprah and get sued by the meat industry or the milk industry for promoting alternative sources of milk. Which it's funny. I don't know. Maybe everyone won't think it's funny, but someone asked, like, why, you know, is it really, if we're calling it, you know, if it's made from almonds or walnuts or cashews or hemp seeds or rice, is it still really milk? What do you think? Should we call it milk, or should we call it something else?
Drink. Yeah, I hear you. That is
so,
interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Janelle had a little follow-up question here, and I'm just checking out in our chat. And we were just talking about beet juice. She said, is it weird to have a throat irritation after eating raw beet?
Janelle, I think you asked this in our Facebook group. It's not, I don't want to call you not normal. It's not normal, but I have experienced people that have had an irritation to raw beets, which is why I like the powdered version. So if I were you, I would try that. There are some enzymes in like beets, papayas, pineapple that some people have a hard time with and that irritates them. So I think you want to, if you know that that irritates you, then I would stick with beet powder because the enzymes are usually a little more tolerable. And if you're drinking it, most people find that it doesn't irritate their throat as much.
Yeah. I've got a solution for you as well. I get the same thing with beet juice, but when I find that I stir in a few tablespoons of goat milk, it everything out. I can't tell you,
Goat milk for the win. We should like hashtag goat milk. That should be the new theme.
The goat milk challenge. Maybe that's
goat milk challenge. Oh my gosh, I could go out on a farm. We could I don't know, do that. We could milk goats. We could have a TRE. That could be our mascot, a goat, like a mountain goat. I like it.
We'll throw it up on the whiteboard and we'll see what happens.
Okay, throwing it out there. All right, so from kind of along that same line, we have a marathon fueling kind of low carb, which this kind of relates to our sugar challenge. So Tammy had asked if she's trying to do more of a low carb diet and reduce kind of the packaged running foods, the goos, the gels, those kinds of things, and doesn't really do well on grains. What are some of her options? And she said her favorite it used to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I am saying, I think we've talked about this before, but roasted sweet potatoes, roasted parsnips and squash, roasting those in some coconut oil with a little sea salt, a little cinnamon, I think is a really great alternative for that fueling. And you can either eat them in chunks or you can kind of mash it up and put it in a Ziploc bag. So then it's more of a gel-like consistency, if that's easier. You can also just buy those.
Hello?
Is a sling I use.
Oh, good. Good.
So yeah, so that's, I think, a great one. And then if she likes, she can still do a peanut butter and jelly, but maybe put it in like a coconut wrap. One of those, they make them now out of, so instead of a tortilla, it's basically made out of coconut flour and coconut parts. So you can get that. Yeah, or then like packets of nut butter or avocado, rice cakes. Those might work. Some people don't have a problem with those, and you can put nut butter on top of those. So yeah, those would be some suggestions for Tammy.
I like that. I'm gonna hop in here and address a question that Mandy has about stretching. She says, I'm terrible at stretching after a run. Stretching to me is putting my seat back a bit in the car and turning on the heater as I'm driving home. Is it better to warm up and cool down post-run and do stretching and mobility on different days or right after running?
I love this question because I wonder about this all the time.
Totally. So I will say it is winter for a lot of us and just general foul weather. I have no interest in you freezing your butt off before and after your run or being in some hellacious rainstorm or snowstorm, because that's not going to be productive either. So we do have to be flexible with ourselves. But we also, let me put it this way. A lot of times we say we'll quote unquote do it later. But as soon as you finish that run, the phone comes out and you're just pulled into the rest of your day. And then all of a sudden you have to make another difficult mental decision to stop what you're doing and do something else. If you can sneak some mobility work in your warm-ups and in your cool downs, well, you don't have to make an additional decision. You just sort of treat that as part of your workout. And basically, you know, your workout's not over until you give yourself a little something good. This could range a lot. You know, if it's like Cameron here who's trying to work on his pistol squats and his single leg squats, you know, what he could do is hang out in the bottom of a narrow squat. If he feels like he has a regular squat together, he could start bringing in his feet closer and closer, eventually till his heels and big toes are touching as he goes down. And he could pull his phone out. He could upload his Strava or his training journal. He could post a little Instagram photo. He could write an email or just check what he has to do the rest of the day. So you can multitask while you're doing a lot of these more, you know, kind of passive mobility exercises. And guys, when we're talking about, you know, going from nothing to something, we don't have to be too complicated other than we just want to budget, you know, 5 to 10 minutes in. I think that's a great place to start. I would say for, you know, the warm-ups, we do tons of videos. If you're in our workouts, if you've seen our quick start, you know, we are like warm-up Nazis. Like slow jogging is not a warm-up for slightly faster jogging. Giving yourself that 30 seconds to stop and, you know, do some leg swings, do some hip circles, do a few air squats. It basically is just a transitionary moment, you know, to kind of quote unquote undo all that time spent in the chair, being more passive at work. Even if you're someone who works on their feet or at a standing desk, like the whole system isn't firing and turned on, right? We need a little something mechanically to get us in the game. And that can translate into you just being more thoughtful, aware about your mechanics in your actual run, which will then translate to you wanting to pay attention to those tight areas and give those tight areas a little love after your run. And then if you do this again and again and again, it's just good things all around. And circling back, I think, Elizabeth, was it Katie? Was that the first question we were addressing between
Christy?
Christy, sorry, Christy, between marathon and half marathon training?
Yeah.
Totally right. So there's that block, like, how do I help myself recover? Well, you know, I know with things like sleep and hydration, if I'm extremely sleep deprived, I can't just make up, you know, that gap with one night's of good sleep. Similarly, if I'm, you know, chronically dehydrated, it's not just going to be amount of a couple hours of slamming water where I'm going to be good. Like it takes a while to get up to those higher levels. And I do know from a mobility and a strength standpoint, our body responds in a similar way. So in terms of recovering faster between two big events, for any of you guys who are getting ready to gear up for your ultra, back-to-back marathons, doing a marathon and then a short race afterwards, you're on that race high because you just finished a fantastic marathon, Lee Bean. I know you're out there and you're thinking about these other races right after. You know, the more you bake in this type of stuff, your body's going to recover faster after, and you're going to be more aware of what you need to address and work on. You know, so I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is that awareness and that ability to be your own mechanic and take care of all those things.
So
Mm-hmm.
I find, and I feel like a lot of people do this with like the warming up. So I'm good after, because I've now learned watching your videos what I have to do. And I kind of like that. Like you said, you can multitask. It kind of calms me down. But beforehand, I'm always really like excited to start my run and my training, or B, I only have, you know, I'm like, well, I've got an hour. So right. Is it better to spend those 10 minutes doing the warm up from that you guys have in your video? Or, because my tendency is like, well, I need to get all of my run in. My coach wrote my run in on my plan, so I need that whole hour to do it. Is there going to be a bigger benefit or reward from spending those 10 minutes
Totally. That's a great question. So for those of you guys who are working with outside coaches, it's good to have this conversation with them. I don't meet too many coaches who will say, stopping to take care of yourself is a bad thing. So sometimes if you kind of get their endorsement, that will make you feel better about the time and that you're not wasting the program. The way that I would sort of see it is, don't think of it as a 10-minute warm-up. Think of the stop and dynamic part. That should take 2 minutes or 3 minutes tops. And you may find, Elizabeth, on certain days, like let's say you just raced hard and you have like a really easy shakeout run. It's like, you know what? If the purpose of that day is just to get blood flow going and everything else, maybe you would spend a full 10 minutes going a little bit deeper into some of those dynamic warm-ups. I'll give you an example. On Monday mornings, I am running at 5:30. I have to be back at, basically 6:25 because I have to coach at San Francisco CrossFit, and I'm trying to maximize that time too. It's also dark and cold, so I don't want to spend 15 minutes
right.
by San Francisco homeless people and raccoons that are now running the city. So I will stop and do just something that's quick for 2 minutes. One or two like go-to things for me, and then I'll just be on my way.
That's okay. That's really helpful. Thank you.
So there's it's sort of like your smoothie recipes, right? These are the general principles. I could add more or less ice depending on, my time and what ingredients I have around me. But a smoothie is better than no smoothie at all.
Amen.
So anyway, so Mindy, for you, the stretching, it is really key. Also, just a quick thing, we like to use the word mobility over stretching. You'll notice that we don't say stretching that often. And the reason why is that when we talk about stretching, we're really talking about arbitrary lengths of certain muscles. When we talk about mobility, we're talking about functional range of motion of all your major joints. And the beautiful thing is that if I focus on, mobility of my hips as opposed to the length of my hamstring, I'm not only going to be addressing my hamstring when I look at my hips, but I'm going to be addressing my glutes, my quads, my hip flexors, all those little nook and cranny muscles that are attached, as opposed to doing something that's a little bit more two-dimensional in terms of my approach to stretching. So again, when I look at mobility, it becomes a much more of a time-saving activity because I'm hitting so many things at the same time. And then just thinking about it, and not to say that, hey, if your calves are tight, doing a specific calf stretch is a bad idea. But sometimes when it comes to our shoulders and our hips, it's equally nice spending time doing those bigger picture things as opposed to the small stuff. So there we go. So what else you got, Elizabeth, for questions? We gotta keep taking.
So next up, we have a question from Janelle. So she says, I work a 12 to 8 p.m. shift, and my lunch is usually my dinner around 4 p.m. When I get home at 9, I'm hungry. My go-to is a bowl of cereal because it's easy. What are the best recommendations for a nighttime snack if I'm going to bed within an hour? So I think we all have that nighttime snacking urge, whether our dinner is at 4 or, at 7. So for runners especially, a kind of magnesium protein-rich snack would be ideal. The magnesium helps with muscle recovery. It's an electrolyte or a mineral that we're always deficient in, and it also helps with sleep. So if you're having a hard time going to sleep, especially, as sometimes at night, if we're just not ready to wind down, so magnesium can help with that. And then the protein, obviously, to help with muscle recovery through the night. So a full fat yogurt with some added nuts or seeds or a little bit of fruit in there. That's a great snack to do, and I swear I wrote this before you said it, a little goat turmeric milk. So a cup of like warmed milk, and I like goat milk because, again, that's a very bioavailable, clean source of dairy. But you could use coconut milk too, or an almond milk with a little stevia, a little vanilla extract, a little turmeric. You have everything you need in there. So you have vitamins and minerals. You have the turmeric to help with inflammation. The stevia and vanilla to sweeten it a little. You can add some cinnamon. I think they call it, the trendy new term is golden milk, because, you know, turmeric can give you that gold yellow color. So that's one that I recommend a lot, especially if you warm it. That has a soothing effect. Can kind of help you get to sleep.
Right? Glass of warm milk.
Exactly. See, grandmas knew what they were talking about when they gave you a warm glass of milk before bed. They just didn't know why. They just knew that it worked.
We also did cod liver oil, right? Didn't we do all these things that are good for us?
Yes, exactly. I know, if I could have, I was telling my grandmother when she saw my cod liver oil supplement, she, you know, said, we've been doing this for years. Before it was a supplement, you drank it straight out of the bottle.
I thought you were going to say, like, we just like bit the fish.
Oh my gosh. Good. Who knows? They probably did back in the day, for goodness sakes. So I like to do a mix in my blender. So I'll get some chia seeds and kind of soak them in water, add a little sea salt if I've had a particularly hard training day, and some frozen blueberries, kind of blend that up, make kind of like a pudding consistency. You can blend up like half of an avocado with some cacao powder, like dark chocolate powder, some cinnamon, vanilla, coconut milk. And you can do whatever consistency. So you can make it liquid so you drink it, or you can make it a little thicker so you can use a spoon. And then if you just want a little something, I like a little bit of coconut oil, or a little bit of nut butter, or a square of dark chocolate. Sometimes, I mean, I personally have never been able to just eat one of those tiny little squares, but there are people that can actually, you know, show some self-restraint. And dark chocolate is a good one before bed, especially if you want something sweet. So yeah, those would be some of my suggestions. And it's a bowl of cereal. It's easy, I get it. And there are probably some cereals that are better than others, but for the most part, that's probably not the best. Like that, you'll get a spike in blood sugar, and, you know, insulin levels raise, and cortisol. So probably not the best idea right before bed.
Totally. I like that. Piggybacking on that a little bit, I have this email pulled up from Hank Donegan, and Hank asks a few things that are good about smoothies. He, is asking, should I be counting my calories or not worry about them with the smoothies? So that's one. And maybe we'll take one at a time, because each one's a little bit different.
Sure. So I am not a big fan of counting calories. I think if you have a significant amount of weight that you're looking to lose, if you aren't familiar with how to eat with portion sizes, I think it can be helpful. But for athletes, when we're looking at, smoothies, and if we're looking at, the ones specifically that I've written in here, they're all pretty calorically balanced. And so it's not as much of a concern. I think where smoothies can be a problem is if you are buying them at those smoothie places.
Right.
Those can get up to 1,000 calories, which is just crazy. Or if you're making them at home and they're predominantly fruit. A lot of people I've noticed, when clients come to me, they'll, say, well, I do a smoothie every morning, and I throw in, it's really good. I throw in water and ice and blueberries and a banana and maybe some pineapple. And, right there, they're at 400 calories of all, fructose.
Right.
So I think having I've talked about this before, but having the 3 key ingredients, the protein, the carbohydrate, and the fat, that you should be more concerned with that than specifically about counting the calories. Again, if you are, looking for a specific weight loss goal, or if you're just learning how to eat healthy, it might be helpful just to learn. But no, I don't think we need to be focused on calorie counting.
Right on. I like that.
Yeah.
He also was asking about, this was kind of a cool follow-up for one of your other emails, where saying from an electrolyte perspective, and I think cyclists performing in a time trial, they did just as well on bananas and water as they did on a sports drink. Am I getting the details of that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So he was asking about CarboPro, and then you can kind of jump in a little bit more specifically. But he says, I've been using CarboPro for pre-race carbo loading and for energy during ultras. It is an expensive product. Do you think banana and water are just as good combined with electrolytes? I can't remember the last time I've bonked in an ultra using CarboPro.
Okay, so I'll have to pull up the label here for CarboPro just so I can see it. But here's the beauty with cycling time trials. They are done primarily on 18 to 25-year-old elite athlete male cyclists. Most of us do not fit within that group. And even if we do, we're not always fueling the same way that they are. A time trial, usually they're looking at 20 minutes, 60 minutes, and sometimes they'll do back-to-back or 60 minutes, or they'll do back-to-back days. But for most of us, our events and our training are, an hour long at different intensities. We are fueling differently before and after. So I don't like to generalize and say, because they did it in this study, it's also going to work for me. That being said, I do like, nature does provide us with a lot of good nutrients. So a banana definitely provides a good amount of potassium and magnesium, but definitely not high enough in sodium for longer distance, longer duration events. And we also want to look at how they often don't show you what those elite cyclists, what their blood and training levels looked like the next day or 4 days from then. So dehydration can take us anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to recover. So if they're not recovering properly, then the supplemental workouts after that are also affected. So again, better to have a hydration product. Do you need it all the time in all of your workouts? Not necessarily. Some of the shorter duration ones, you can definitely use, water, a little sea salt with some lemon. Mineral waters are good. Those are kind of everywhere nowadays. And then adding minerals to your diet can also help. All right, so I'm going to look up this CarboPro label and see
what we got.
See what we got here. Let's see, where's that? So it looks like CarboPro, 200 calories, 50 grams of carbohydrates. So it doesn't have any sodium or potassium, which would worry me from a hydration standpoint. From a fueling standpoint, if liquid fuel works for you, I think it's, it seems to be made up. So glucose polymers, from non-GMO corn. I think if it agrees with you, it's all right. It's kind of along the line of UCAN or one of those kind of super starch.
Yeah, I'm pulling up some things online so people can see. I was trying to figure out if I got the right label.
Let me look at what you're looking at here. Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at.
Black and red thing?
Yeah, so I don't...
Let me see.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like their Hydra things. I'm trying to figure out which one.
Oh, so they have.
We got a bunch of things.
I guess, yeah, depending then on which one he's using.
Totally.
That
this gets a little tricky because these guys have so many products out now. This is, crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, so I guess the general recommendation would be look and make sure that it has the sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Those are your, really important electrolytes. Heavy on the sodium side if you're doing the longer duration events. And if CarboPro works for your fueling, then I would say stick with it if it's been working.
Love it. Perfect. What else we got?
Let's see, next up. So we had Holly asked if I could go over some sugars, like the good sugars versus the bad sugars, what to use and what to avoid. So pretty simple in terms of what to avoid. So high fructose corn syrup, table sugar, the white sugar we all see, and any derivative thereof. So just because it's a little thicker in a crystal form, or just because they call it cane sugar, all the different, tricky little names that we've been talking about in the Breakfast Club, processed sugars, artificial sweeteners, you want to try and avoid. Agave is definitely one, in my opinion, to avoid. Brown sugar. I actually had a client of mine say, well, I used the brown sugar, not the white sugar. And I thought, well, that's lovely, but it's just white sugar dyed brown most of the time with a caramel flavoring. Ooh. So those I would say would be the ones to try and avoid. If you are sweetening, I like local raw honey. I like molasses. I like stevia, dates. So you can either, use that dates in smoothies or in baking recipes. You can make a date paste to sweeten. So in things like oatmeal or, even I think they even make a date sugar. Pure maple syrup, monk fruit. That's it's new to a lot of people. It's been around for a long time. But that's a great sweetener. So my kind of, I think, or how I look for things in terms of, do I want to consume them? Are there other vitamins and minerals? Is it minimally processed? So honey, rich in vitamin B6. If it's local raw honey, you're getting the anti-allergy benefits. I
love that. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's such a cool thing about local honey.
So my non-scientific, I'm not a beekeeper, would be able to explain it much better, but because the bees are using the pollen from local plants and flowers, when they're making the honey, those antibodies and antigens are included in that honey and will help not only build your immune system to local viruses and bugs, like flu type bugs and colds, but it will also help you with allergy, with local allergies. So there are different types of pollens, different types of grasses and weeds, depending on where you live. And if you are consuming those, which is why bee pollen is an excellent, I add that in the spring to my smoothies on a daily basis. You're getting those antihistamines through the honey that the bees are making because they're local to your area.
Yeah, that is so cool. What would be, and again, like if this is stretching your, bee specific, non-goat milk specialty nutrition knowledge, how much like honey, like what would be a minimum effective dose?
That's an excellent question. I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen that, people have said, that to consume in the spring when allergy season is bad, if I suffer, I have clients that suffer, I recommend that they get, a tablespoon of local raw honey every day. But that's just based off of experience. I don't have any study showing, but I can look it up. I can talk, I can ask around.
So that's one of those, because that's one of those interesting things, right? Because there's obviously some benefits to sugar, but that's not necessarily, again, licensed to be, you know, Winnie the Pooh with your honey pot.
Yes, good, very good point. Yeah, don't start. You know, if you're suffering from allergies, don't just start drinking it by the jar full.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe like a tablespoon or something once a day would be a good place to go.
Right. You do need to be careful. It's still a sugar. It's still going to raise your blood sugar, spike, you know, add insulin, or cause an insulin spike. So you definitely still need to be careful with that.
Right on. Well, quick time check here. We got about 10 minutes left to squeeze as much as we can in. Elizabeth, I had 2 questions I wanted to hit. One was from Mark on foam rolling, and then our ever intrepid TRE team captain Char had some questions about getting ready for some ultra training. And I know you guys out there in the ultra training are, you know, kind of curious about how long should the long runs be? How do you stack them? And I want to give my thoughts there. Elizabeth, what else do you have that you want to
So I'll real quick do the question about, I think Liz actually asked this one. She said, I make a trail mix that includes peanuts. I know walnuts and almonds are likely better, but there's a significant cost difference. Are peanuts okay? So absolutely, peanuts are okay. I recommend kind of getting a variety of nuts and seeds because they all have different nutrients. But if you're looking at it ounce for ounce, almonds have, you know, 170 calories, 6 grams of protein, and 3 grams of fiber. Walnut or peanuts, 166 calories, 7 grams of protein, 2 grams of fiber. So they're almost equivalent. The nutrients, you know, both of them are nutrient dense. Peanuts are a slightly better source of protein. They have resveratrol, you know, but all nuts are an excellent source of nutrition. You just want to be really careful not to overdo it. So nuts, with the exception of walnuts, because those have omega-3s, nuts have a lot of omega-6s. And we, as you know, we eat a greater quantity of this omega-6, and we need to kind of reverse that ratio. So we should be getting more omega-3s, less omega-6s. So any kind of nut is great. I buy it raw, buy it unsalted. And, you know, if you really want to go the extra mile, you can soak the nut. That helps with digestion and kind of nutrient absorption, but I certainly don't have the time to do that. Most people don't. And then, you know, get a variety in there, but don't overdo it.
Yeah.
So, here we go.
I know that like peanuts and legumes got a little bit of a bad rap with a lot of the like conversation around the paleo diet, which we'll probably have to save for another call.
Yes,
there's a lot we can go in there.
A lot of things got a bad rap in the paleo diet, I think, or the Whole30 diet, or whatever the new diet of the day is.
Yeah, totally. And I just have to ask, I know our listeners want to know, do you know these like peanut and like almond stats off the top of your head, the same way people can like recite like, you know, Wayne Gretzky's like, you know.
Yes. Yes, I have my hands over my face. I do. I've had to, you know, talk about this. I've been able to talk about this so much that yes, all the fun out of food is gone. I know those facts and things now. So
you know too much. You literally know how sausage is made. Literally.
Oh my gosh. That's a scary YouTube video. If you want to keep eating hot dogs or sausage, don't go search for that online. It ruins it.
Okay. And on that note.
Yeah, on that note, tell me about foam rolling, because I love it, but I want to know when to do it, how to do it. I've seen your videos.
Totally.
Listen.
So Mark asked, how often should I foam roll? Quads, IT band, caps, etc. How many times per week, and for each session, how long in each muscle? I would say from a general standpoint, general maintenance, nothing in particular is wrong with your body and your training. I think hitting all your major muscle groups at least twice for a good 15 to 20-minute session is not excessive. And that's basically the equivalent of you're going to get your oil changed and your tires rotated, and you're doing it preemptively, right? Nothing's wrong with your car, but you're just going to get the basic treatment and care in. And, you know, knowing that that number is going to fudge in either direction based on how hard you're training and what you got coming around the corner, right? So kind of back to the car analogy, if I'm someone who only drives, you know, 10, 15 minutes to work back and forth, I don't really drive my car and anything else, I could probably get away with like 2 oil changes a year. You know, maybe 3's better, but I could probably get away with 2. But all of a sudden, if I am commuting, you know, 2 to 3 hours every single day, I'm hitting some bumpy roads, I'm going up some big hills and really having to rev the engine, I'm using the brakes a lot, maybe it's snowy and I'm dealing with a lot of different terrain, well, all of a sudden the wear and tear on that engine is happening a lot faster. It basically means that 1 to 2 oil changes a year is going to translate to you, you know, in a ditch with an overheated engine somewhere on a mountain pass where you don't want to be. The running equivalent is you on a trail and your knee has just buckled because your IT band has finally given you the middle finger, literally and proverbially, as you go through. It says like, I'm done. So basically we want to increase the amount of care to potentially giving ourselves a once over, you know, maybe 3 times a week. When we start talking about specific body parts that are, you know, giving you some issues, you know, it's not excessive to go after those body parts every day, especially if it's something where, let's say your calf is preventing you from running. It's not excessive, I think, to be hitting your calf every single day. What I would say is that we don't want to be poking on the same part every single day, the same exact way. And I'll give you an example. Your shoulder could be 100% fine, but if you started to poke it every single day or rub it in the same spot for 15 minutes every single day, it would probably develop a bruise. And this is important to remember. When we're doing mobility and soft tissue work, we are literally creating some level of damage in the tissue to profuse blood flow there, to break up some sticky adhesions and all the little tissue layers around the fascia to get our muscle sliding more. But we're actually creating some damage to do it. And what's really important is that we sort of change the damage that we create with different tools and in slightly different areas. So even with the calf, if I go super hard on my Achilles, it actually might be tender the next day, not because of the injury, but because how hard you went on the massage. And anyone who's gotten, you know, a deep body work, a good rule of thumb is not to get a super hard massage right before your race, or, you know, right before, right after really, really hard training, right? It almost counts like a workout in and of itself. So with that work, you can be rigorous and aggressive, and most of us aren't rigorous or aggressive enough with our massage work. So, you know, giving yourself sessions of 15, 20 to 30 minutes, honestly, the end of the day, you know, you got beer, glass of wine in hand, you got Netflix on, you know, watch a Netflix episode, focus on, you know, one leg or your lower body, and watch another Netflix episode and work on your upper body. You don't need to think about it too much. That's a good way to target. In terms of specific techniques and tools,
Can I just chime in quick?
Yeah, please jump in.
So, I've always wondered if does it matter like to foam roll right after your workout, or is it okay to do it at Netflix? So if it's at night, I'm still getting the same benefit that I would if I did it directly after exercising.
You know, that's a great question. Our friends over at Mobility WOD, Dr. Kelly Starrett, they really believe that it's a bad idea to foam roll right before a workout. Because one of the things a massage does, you know, when you finish a massage, you feel kind of sleepy and a little out of it and all relaxed. And what you've effectively done is down regulated your nervous system, which is just kind of a fancy term for, letting you kind of relax and chill out a little bit. But what happens is before we work out, we don't want to be in that state. We kind of get ourselves amped up. So a lot of the dynamic work that we do, our leg swings, our push-ups, some burpees, things that get blood flow to tissue, to all of our joints and tendons, that start to open up that range of motion, to get your brain talking to all the muscles in your body, getting your hips firing and stable. That's the type of work we want to do for our warm-up. The one caveat to that, I'd say, is if you're someone who is dealing with a really acute issue and it's the only time you have to do, and you find this one sticking point, a little rolling is successful, doing it will be helpful, but you're going to almost have to do the dynamic warm-up again just to get yourself back and ready.
Got it.
Yeah, and so basically saving a lot of that mobility work, for the end of the day. You could do it right after your workout, depending on how hard the session is. I would say, like, if you have an easy session, doing it will be fine. Like, I tell you what, like, if I've just raced a marathon, I've done so much damage to my quads. Like, they're not ready for me to go hard on them on the quads, right? It's too much. Like, I just want to walk around and do some light movement and maybe save some of that stuff for later.
Awesome. Thank you. I've always wondered that.
Well, there we go. And just a few quick words before we get out of here for our ultra training. And guys, this is just the start of the conversation for sure. We're definitely going to be building some ultra training resources out because I know you guys are looking forward and you want it. Char is getting ready for this super crazy multi-day endurance run, and I kind of love the concept of these different types of challenges where instead of doing a marathon in one day, you would run the equivalent of 20 miles 3 days in a row with crazy elevation. So it becomes interesting either with the super long ultra day itself or those multi-day events, is building this resiliency and your ability to continue to be strong and have good mechanics even under fatigue. The temptation with these longer runs, guys, is a little fear comes in the respect of, oh my goodness, if I don't do these progressively longer and longer runs, I'm not going to be able to make my race. So it kind of puts us in a position where we're sort of willingly ignoring potentially certain aspects of our body parts to try to get the training in. And then for most of us with these ultra things, I tell you what, the biggest challenge is not getting to the finish line. It's actually getting to the starting line healthy. So there's always that general rule. I'd rather do a little bit less and arrive healthy than, dot every I and cross every T from a run volume standpoint and potentially risk some sort of injury or burnout. The other thing I'd add on there, there's a big world of this depends. When we start getting into this long stuff, so much of this has to do with your maturity as an athlete, your ability to read and make those adjustments on a daily basis, your understanding of strength and mechanics, and the time to fit it all in. When you start running longer and longer, guess what? It takes more time, which basically makes you rush the other important aspects of your rehab and your recovery. An important thing to understand, though, is that the longer and harder you push yourself, you actually need more recovery, not less. So it's no mistake that, runners and triathletes who are doing multi-sessions in a day and are professional athletes and don't have to deal with the stresses of family and working kids, they will sleep and take a nap in between their sessions. Now, that's not things that we can do specifically, but we do just have to be aware. I'll give you an example. I was having great success with one of my athletes. She's down in LA. She's getting ready for this, week-long long run in Costa Rica. And her training was great, but every couple of weeks, like clockwork, she would get a cold or something that was just off. And she's like, I'm doing great. And all of a sudden she'd slam into a wall, she'd be sick for a couple days. And, she was like, well, my sleep is good. I'm like, what's your sleep? And she's like, well, I get 7-8 hours. And it's like, well, yeah, that's good, but maybe it's not good enough for you. Maybe we need to read the signs. And she's like, well, I have a hard time, getting more. And I'm like, I understand. I was like, well, make me a deal. Let's do this. Let's try to go to bed 15 minutes earlier for the next week. And just to see if we can adjust to that. And if that feels good, let's go to bed an additional 15 minutes earlier the week after that. So net, she's starting to gain an extra 30 minutes of sleep a night. And that adds up to 3.5 hours of sleep over the whole week. And that's been really, really good for her. So sometimes when you do the ultra stuff, guys, those little details become so important is because they become so magnified, right? You're just so much on the edge. So that stuff is so important there. And I'll definitely give you guys better tips and advice in terms of how to stack your runs, what your long runs should be, what should the runs look like immediately before, during, and after. Char, I definitely owe you a deeper explanation on those things, but I just wanted to kind of paint those broader strokes. So I think that is probably helpful for all of us. Everything from branching up from our 10K to our first half marathon or marathon to beyond. Well, Elizabeth, thank you for hanging out. It is 5:06 my time. Who knows what time it is where you are. And if you've been listening to the recording, thank you for listening to this thing. Remember, we'll be doing live nutrition challenges again in the future. The way you had access to the nutrition challenge was through the training club. We're giving you guys an ability to access and stream all of our programs and future challenges just with one monthly subscription fee. So it's not too bad. So definitely check that out. If you have any more questions, hit us up. Elizabeth, thanks again for being on here.
Thank you, Nate. This is my favorite thing every week now. We've got it on Wednesdays. Always good stuff covered.
Good call. And guys, we have the next two calls scheduled. I'll make sure that they are in your email, but just quickly, next week is Wednesday the 8th. That call will be at 11 a.m. Pacific time. The following week, Wednesday the 15th, we're going to be back at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And Janelle, yes, we need to do a running camp.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that is a super idea. We definitely need to get that going.
I love that idea. All right, guys, thanks again. Run fast, burpee like crazy, and we'll see you online.